Hi everyone, Comic Book Reviewer here. This time reviewing on Absolute Superman issue number 1. Now, as you know, the Absolute series is DC's answer to Ultimate Marvel, and unlike the newer Ultimate stuff that does feel a bit rushed, I can definitely see where the Absolute series is being a lot more creative. It's taking a bit more of a different approach, unlike the newer Ultimate stuff that feels rushed. And here we have the newer take on Superman for the Absolute series, being completely different from his sort of main DC counterpart, and going a bit more darker, edgier, and realistic with the story. So let's get on. It starts off how on the planet of Krypton, which has now become a thriving planet of corruption and these sort of higher up scientists who wear their sort of uniforms as suns to show their form of power. And we kind of see how instead of being scientists in this continuity, Lara was once a science student but got into trouble and was now kind of barred from ever becoming a scientist, and of course now works as a farmer for a simple life. And it's also shown that the higher ups of Krypton kind of pay, manipulate, and kind of pull strings with the system to kind of get more money and that coming in. Sort of like those shady companies you do see that will use questionable methods. And we even see how those who are less successful, those who are kind of more like the less common, wear the sort of Superman S and showing their forms of being normal people of society. And it's kind of like, where people are given jobs and promotions while the lower people kind of have to scrape by. And it even becomes clear in this continuity, Jor-El was one of them, who was originally a graduated science student, but because of obviously giving his speech, it's kind of left him without his promotion. But we even do see how Jor-El questions some of the rocks and so forth, and being a bit more cautious of the sort of minds and that, saying, "What in the name of Lucas is the meaning of this? Why are you workers standing around topside not digging sunstones? Safety concerns, sir. Come of the mines herd." I shut it down. I'm here for geological engineering, and I have concerns about the mine's stability. But we even do see how he tries to get his superior to listen to reason, but is too arrogant, stuck up, and badly tempered to listen to reason. But obviously, because of his actions, it ends up kind of doing a lot more harm, and inside the mines leaks out the dangerous radiation. Obviously being the version of kryptonite, where we do see how Jor-El tries in vain to save his superior to little to no avail. And we do kind of see how in Brazil, workers and that get ready to work, while obviously the Peacemaker squad get them to work down in the mines. And obviously they see that all the diamonds have been sort of sorted out and that. And even them sort of thinking it's like a miracle, it's amazing and all that. We even see them saying, they're already out? With diamonds? That's impossible. Yeah, you heard about Botswana and Davari? Look like it's happened again. But of course we are seeing how one of these sort of workers talks with basically a hooded stranger, and obviously it's clear that this is meant to be Clark Kent. And after having a bit of a talk with him, we see how one of the workers ends up being interrogated by one of the Peacemaker squad members, and of course we see how Clark is obviously using a sort of special solar device to charge himself up, and even has his own AI system. And we see right away that the Peacemaker team show up to try and capture Clark Kent, but of course we see how he has to kind of avoid the Peacemaker squad, and even kind of avoiding getting shot while trying to help civilians. And of course, we see how much like with his AI system, it kind of gives that feel to Tony and Jarvis. And it becomes clear that Clark is trying to save everyone that he can, despite obviously doing some of this to himself. But we see how he ends up getting striked from the sky, and obviously this is meant to be the Lazarus team, one of which is meant to be the absolute version of basically Lois Lane, who's part of the squad. And we see how he charges up a powerful energy blast, which obviously leaves him depleted, and obviously the Lazarus team ended up capturing him. And we see them saying, "Field team, go, go, go!" Maybe, right so. This was a bad idea, and I don't really feel so great. Let's get out of here before. And of course, Lois Lane ends up capturing him, and obviously ends up being taken to the sort of Nevada desert with the absolute version of Brainiac. And obviously having the sort of Kent's house in the middle of nowhere, and the farm being left in tatters. And we even see how obviously Lara comes back to see that Jor-El has come back from the hospital, and turns out, unlike the other DC versions, Kal-El is obviously meant to be a young kid here, not an infant. So you can tell the writers were taking a bit more creative choices, not to kind of go with the worn-out territories of other DC media, but doing something completely different. So this is Absolute Superman issue 1. I think my best thoughts, it's an okay start to what it needs to be. It has to be something new. It has to be something different. And it obviously is doing what obviously my adventures with Superman had to be. A clean slate. Something different. Something new. Something spectacular. And it's clear it is being a little similar to Superman Earth 1, but unlike Superman Earth 1 that went with a more movie approach, I can kind of see where Absolute Superman is going a bit more of the Man of Steel option, being a little more realistic, but trying to keep true to its comic book roots. So it definitely deserves thumbs in the middle. Kind of alright, kind of okay, but not a bad story. So, Comic Book Reviewer here, signing out.